James had waited years for this moment, the day he and his wife Alina would finally move into their dream home. Nestled on a quiet street lined with tall oaks and neatly trimmed lawns, the neighborhood seemed like the perfect place to begin. The next chapter of their lives, Alina, a proud military veteran, had recently retired from active duty and was eager to embrace civilian life alongside James. Their new home, with its warm brick facade and cozy porch, promised comfort and peace, a welcome change after years of frequent moves and deployments. From the moment they pulled into the driveway, James felt a deep sense of relief. This was their place, their sanctuary, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture. They worked together with a sense of excitement, each item finding a place in the home they'd long dreamed of creating. Alina's collection of military memorabilia found a spot in the living room, a subtle reminder of her service and strength. But amidst the joy, James couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. From across the street, an older woman sat on her porch, eyes fixed on their every move. She was impeccably dressed, with sharp features and a cold gaze that made James's skin prick. Neighbors had mentioned her name once or twice, Mrs. Caldwell, known for her meticulous attention to neighborhood rules and an uncanny ability to stir up trouble. Alina noticed her too and gave a small, polite nod. She seems watchful. James nodded, tension settling in his chest. He hoped it was nothing. Days passed, and while most neighbors kept to themselves, Mrs. Caldwell's silent watchfulness never wavered. When Alina took the dog for a walk or worked in the garden, the woman was always nearby, observing with what felt like quiet judgment. The couple tried to brush it off, focusing instead on settling in, meeting a few neighbors who offered friendly greetings and warm smiles. But the presence of Mrs. Caldwell lingered like a shadow. One sunny afternoon, Alina returned from a trip to the local market to find a small envelope slipped under the front door. It was addressed to her with an official-looking HOA sealed dot. James opened it cautiously. Inside was a letter reminding them of neighborhood guidelines. Nothing unusual at first glance, till the last paragraph caught their attention. It mentioned concerns about unregistered residents and the need to verify occupancy status. The tone was formal, but the implication clear. Alina's jaw tightened. "They think I'm not supposed to live here." James frowned. "It's probably just bureaucracy. We'll handle it." But as evening settled in, the couple's unease grew. Later that night, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies flicker in the cooling air, Alina spoke softly. "I've faced challenges before, but this feels different. It's personal." James reached for her hand. "We'll get through this together. I promise." Unbeknownst to them, Mrs. Caldwell was already preparing the next move. One that would bring the police to their doorstep and test the strength of their new beginning. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains as James and Alina sipped their coffee, trying to shake off the weight of the previous day's letter. They had hoped the note was just an overcautious reminder from the neighborhood association, nothing more than routine paperwork. But an uneasy feeling lingered in the air, like a storm quietly gathering strength on the horizon, as James checked his phone. A sudden firm knock on the door startled them both. He exchanged a glance with Alina before standing to answer. On the porch stood two police officers, their faces serious but not hostile. "Good morning, sir. We received a call regarding some concerns about activity at this address." One officer explained politely. James frowned, trying to make sense of the situation. "Concerns? What kind of concerns?" The officer glanced at a small notebook. "There was a report about possible unauthorized occupancy. We just want to verify everything's in order." Alina stepped forward calmly. "I'm Alina. I live here with my husband, James. Is there a problem?" The officers exchanged looks and nodded toward her. One of them asked for identification. Alina reached into her wallet and pulled out her driver's license, handing it over without hesitation. While the officers examined the ID, Mrs. Caldwell appeared on the sidewalk nearby, watching the scene unfold with a faint, self-satisfied smile. James felt a surge of anger, but reminded himself to stay calm. Is there something wrong with my wife's identification? James asked quietly. 1. Officer hesitated before replying. No, sir. Just need to be sure all residents are properly registered. Alina then reached into her purse and pulled out a small plastic card, her military identification. The officer's expressions changed instantly. The respect was palpable as they scanned the card, nodding slightly. This explains a lot. The officer said, "Thank you for your service, ma'am." James felt a flicker of relief. Seemed the truth had cleared the confusion. But as the officers prepared to leave, Mrs. Caldwell stepped forward. Her voice sharp and unwavering. Are you sure she's supposed to live here? I've seen no paperwork submitted, she said, arms crossed. The officers glanced at her. Then, back at Alina, if there are any further concerns, the Homeowners Association is the proper channel to handle them. One officer advised before turning away. Mrs. Caldwell huffed but said no more as the officers walked down the porch steps and into their car. James closed the door gently behind them, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Alina, are you okay? He asked, his voice tinged with concern. She nodded, though her eyes held a flicker of sadness. It was a shock, but I've faced worse. I won't let this shake me. James pulled her into a comforting embrace. We'll get through this together. But deep down, they both knew this incident was just the beginning of a longer road. Mrs. Caldwell's watchful gaze and swift call to the police had made one thing clear. Their presence in the neighborhood was going to be tested. That evening, as neighbors peeked from windows and the usual quiet settled over the street, James and Alina sat together on the porch. The stars shone above like distant witnesses to the challenges ahead. Do you think it's worth fighting for? Alina asked softly. James took her hand firmly. This is our home now. We'll stand tall and show them who we are, not with words but with our actions. And with that promise, the couple prepared for the days to come, ready to face the set. Unspoken doubts and quiet resistance with the unwavering strength they had cultivated through years of resilience. The morning after the police visit, James and Alina woke to a neighborhood buzzing quietly with whispers. The news of the unexpected visit had spread, carried from porch to porch like a gentle wind rustling through the leaves. Some neighbors were curious, others cautious. But one thing was clear. Alina's presence had stirred the still waters of this quiet street. Alina had prepared herself for the scrutiny. But the reality of living under a microscope was still a new experience. As she stepped outside to water the garden, she felt eyes on her from across the street. Mrs. Caldwell sat on her porch as usual, her gaze sharp and unwavering. Instead of retreating, Alina straightened her shoulders and returned the gaze with steady calm. It was the first small act of defiance against the invisible walls the neighborhood had built around her. Inside the house, James sifted through the mail and found a letter addressed to Alina. This time, it was from the neighborhood association requesting proof of residency and asking her to attend a meeting to discuss community matters. The tone was polite but firm, the kind that suggested the matter was serious. Later that day, Alina and James attended the association meeting held in the small clubhouse at the heart of the neighborhood. The room was filled with familiar faces. Some curious, some wary, including Mrs. Caldwell, who sat near the front with a watchful expression. The meeting began with routine topics. But as soon as the discussion turned toward Alina, the atmosphere shifted. The association's president spoke carefully, acknowledging Alina's residency, but expressing concerns about maintaining the neighborhood's character. James felt a surge of frustration, but remained silent, letting Alina speak for herself. When it was her turn, Alina stood with quiet confidence. I am proud to call this neighborhood my home, she said. I served this country for many years, and now I want to contribute to this community in any way I can. She showed her military ID once again, the card gleaming under the clubhouse lights, a symbol of her service, dedication, and resilience. There was a moment of silence, a breath held collectively. Some faces softened, the initial resistance giving way to newfound respect. One neighbor, A young woman named Sarah spoke up. "I didn't know you were a veteran, Alina. Thank you for your service. I think we could all learn from your example." Mrs. Caldwell's expression tightened, but she said nothing. Her gaze fixed firmly on Alina as the meeting concluded. Several neighbors approached Alina and James with warm smiles and words of encouragement. It was the first sign that barriers were beginning to break down. Back at home, James and Alina reflected on the day's events. The path ahead was still uncertain, but they could sense a shift, a subtle opening in the neighborhood's heart. Alina looked at James with a hopeful smile. Maybe this place isn't as closed off as it seemed. James nodded. Sometimes it just takes one person to start changing the story. That evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Alina and James sat together on their porch, feeling the weight of the day lift just a little. The journey toward acceptance had begun, and with it, the promise of new connections and unexpected friendships. The days that followed the neighborhood meeting carried a quiet but undeniable change. Alina and James noticed a difference in how some neighbors greeted them. Smiles replaced nods. Brief conversations turned into lingering chats. The invisible barrier that had once surrounded their home was beginning to crack. Still not. Everyone was ready to welcome them with open arms. Mrs. Caldwell remained distant, her eyes sharp and wary whenever she crossed paths with Alina. But the old woman's watchfulness felt less like an accusation and more like a silent challenge. A gauntlet thrown, daring Alina to prove her place. Alina was determined to accept the challenge, not with words, but through her actions. She began spending more time outside, tending to her garden with care and inviting neighbors to join her. Her gentle nature and genuine warmth slowly chipped away at the hesitation many felt. One afternoon, as Alina trimmed the rose bushes, Mrs. Caldwell approached her doorstep. The old woman's expression was unreadable, but there was something softer in her eyes. "I've noticed you around," Mrs. Caldwell said quietly. "You're different from what I expected." Alina smiled warmly. "I'd like to think that people can surprise each other when given the chance." Mrs. Caldwell hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Maybe so." News of Alina's involvement in local veterans events began to spread. She volunteered at the nearby community center, helping organize support programs for other veterans transitioning to civilian life. Her dedication was impossible to ignore, and it sparked conversations among neighbors who had once viewed her with suspicion. James watched with pride as Alina became a quiet force of goodwill in their new home. He joined her at events, lending his support and meeting neighbors on his own terms. Together, they were slowly weaving themselves into the neighborhood's fabric. Yet, even as progress was made, the undercurrent of doubt still lingered in some corners. Whispers floated like soft breezes, hinting at stories not yet told and judgments not fully laid to rest. One evening, after a neighborhood potluck, James overheard a conversation between two residents discussing Alina's military background, with newfound respect but also a hint of envy. "She's strong," one neighbor remarked. "Not everyone here has that kind of courage." James realized then that Alina's presence was changing more than just the perception of their family. It was shifting the neighborhood's understanding of strength and resilience. Back at home, Alina and James talked late into the night. "It's not just about us," Alina said thoughtfully. "It's about what we bring to this place. The stories, the sacrifices, the hope for something better." James nodded, squeezing her hand. "We're making a difference, one step at a time." As the moon rose high and the night grew still, the couple felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The journey was far from over, but the path forward was becoming clearer, marked not by confrontation, but by connection. And somewhere across the street, on a porch that once only watched with suspicion, Mrs. Caldwell sat quietly, her eyes reflecting the flicker of a small but significant change. Alina's presence in the neighborhood had begun to resonate in subtle but powerful ways. No longer just the new resident with a military background, she was becoming a symbol of dedication and community spirit. Her daily acts of kindness did not go unnoticed. One Saturday morning, Alina arrived early at the community center, where she volunteered to help with a veteran support group. She set up chairs and organized refreshments, her calm efficiency inspiring the small team of volunteers. Among them was Sarah, the neighbor who had spoken up at the meeting weeks ago. Now a frequent companion. Together, they worked to create a welcoming space for those transitioning from military to civilian life. Alina listened attentively to the stories shared, offering encouragement and practical advice. Her presence was more than comforting. It was empowering. Word began to spread about Alina's contributions. And soon, invitations to neighborhood events followed. At the spring picnic, Alina and James arrived with homemade treats, greeted by smiles and genuine warmth. Families gathered, children played, and laughter filled the air. It felt like the neighborhood was slowly embracing them, one shared moment at a time. Mrs. Caldwell, however, remained a silent observer. She attended the picnic but kept her distance, watching Alina with a mixture of curiosity and caution. For the first time, Alina approached her, holding out a plate of freshly baked cookies. "Would you like one?" Alina asked softly. Mrs. Caldwell accepted the plate, a faint smile breaking through her usual stern expression. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I suppose there's more to you than I first thought." Alina nodded, hopeful. "I believe there's more to all of us. We just need a chance to show it." Back at home, James and Alina reflected on the slow but meaningful progress. They had expected resistance, but not the genuine moments of connection that now punctuated their days. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, James spoke thoughtfully. "You've changed the neighborhood, Alina. It's like you're living proof that actions speak louder than assumptions." Alina smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "It's not about proving anything. It's about being who we are, no matter the doubts or judgments." The next morning, a surprising phone call came from the neighborhood association president. They invited Alina to speak at the upcoming annual meeting, not as a new resident, but as a valued member of the community. The invitation was both an honor and a challenge. Alina accepted, determined to use the opportunity to share her story and inspire others. As the day of the meeting approached, Alina prepared carefully. She wanted to speak from the heart, to bridge the gap that suspicion had created with stories of courage, resilience, and hope. On the evening of the meeting, the room was filled with neighbors, old and new. Mrs. Caldwell was there, seated near the front, her eyes fixed on Alina with an intensity that bordered on respect. When Alina took the microphone, her voice was steady and clear. She spoke not just of her military service, but of the challenges and triumphs that had shaped her. She shared her hopes for the neighborhood, a place where everyone could feel welcome and valued. Her words stirred something in the room. Applause followed, genuine and heartfelt. After the meeting, neighbors approached Alina with smiles and handshakes. Mrs. Caldwell was among them. She looked Alina in the eye and said simply, "Thank you." Alina nodded, feeling the weight of those words. They marked a turning point, a moment when suspicion gave way to understanding. As the couple returned home that night, James whispered, "You've done more than live by example. You've opened a door for all of us." Alina smiled, knowing the journey was far from over, but confident that every step forward was a victory, not just for them, but for the entire neighborhood. The days following Alina's heartfelt speech at the annual meeting were filled with an encouraging sense of momentum. Many neighbors began to approach her and James more openly, inviting them to gatherings and sharing stories over freshly baked pies or cups of coffee. It seemed the neighborhood was slowly embracing the couple, not just as residents, but as part of the fabric of their shared life. Yet, beneath this blossoming warmth, there remained a small pocket of resistance. Mrs. Caldwell's cool demeanor softened slightly but did not vanish entirely. She still kept a distance, her sharp eyes still observing Alina and James's every move. One crisp autumn afternoon, Alina received an unexpected letter from the neighborhood association. The tone was polite but carried a subtle reminder. All residents were expected to maintain certain standards for the upkeep of their properties. It was an ordinary request on the surface. Yet, Alina sensed the underlying pressure. The letter mentioned a scheduled inspection of their property the following week. Alina discussed it with James, who shared her concern. It feels like they're testing us, looking for a reason to criticize. Alina nodded, her jaw set with quiet determination. Let's make sure our place is in perfect shape. We won't give anyone a reason to doubt us. Together, they spent the next days tending to their home with extra care. James repaired a loose fence panel, while Alina cleared leaves from the gutters and trimmed the hedges. Their efforts transformed the yard into an inviting, immaculate space that spoke of pride and respect. When the inspection day arrived, a small group from the association showed up, including Mrs. Caldwell. Alina greeted them warmly, offering coffee and homemade cookies, a gesture that surprised even herself. The inspectors examined the property with careful eyes, checking every detail. Mrs. Caldwell scrutinized the garden, the porch, and the freshly painted shutters. Yet, as the visit progressed, her expression softened, and she even offered a faint nod of approval. Afterward, the association sent a note confirming their satisfaction with the upkeep. There would be no issues, no further inspections necessary. At least for now, Alina and James felt a quiet victory, but they knew it was not the end of their journey. The neighborhood was evolving, but change was a gradual process, requiring patience and resilience. One evening, as they shared dinner, a knock came at the door. James opened it to find Sarah, their neighbor and new friend, holding a small plant. "I thought this might brighten up your porch," she said with a smile. Alina accepted the gift gratefully. "Thank you, Sarah. That means a lot." Sarah's visit was a reminder of the new bonds forming connections, built on trust and kindness rather than suspicion. Yet, the couple remained mindful of the undercurrents still swirling beneath the surface. Mrs. Caldwell's watchful eyes, the occasional whispered comment, and the lingering tension all hinted that acceptance was a journey, not a destination, as the leaves turned golden and the neighborhood settled into the rhythms of fall. James and Alina found strength in each other and in the small community they were helping to build. "We're not just neighbors," Alina said one evening, looking out at the street bathed in twilight. "We're part of something bigger." James smiled, squeezing her hand, "And together, we'll keep moving forward." The couple's determination shone like a beacon, a quiet promise that they would face whatever challenges came next with grace and courage, proving that true belonging is earned through kindness, patience, and unwavering spirit. The neighborhood had begun to feel like home. Lena and James were no longer the outsiders, but part of a growing circle of friends. Weekends were filled with shared meals, lively conversations, and quiet moments of companionship on porches and in backyards. The warmth they felt was a sharp contrast to the chilly reception they had initially encountered. Even Mrs. Caldwell had started to soften further. While still reserved, she occasionally exchanged brief smiles with Alina and even asked for advice about caring for her rose bushes. It was a small gesture, but one that spoke volumes. One afternoon, as Alina and James prepared for a neighborhood fundraiser benefiting local veterans, a new challenge arose. A flyer circulated quickly, an anonymous note claiming that Alina's military service was exaggerated and questioning her right to live in the neighborhood. The note stirred whispers and unease among some residents, threatening to undo months of progress. Alina felt the sting of betrayal but refused to let it break her. She gathered James and Sarah at their kitchen table, the three forming a quiet alliance to face this unexpected storm. "We can't let this divide us," Alina said firmly. "The truth is on our side." James nodded. "We'll respond with facts, with transparency, and with the support of the people who know us." Together, they crafted a plan. Alina would share her military records openly, and they would invite neighbors to attend the fundraiser and see firsthand the work she did to support veterans. The next neighborhood meeting was tense. Alina stood before the crowd, her military ID and documents in hand. She spoke with calm conviction about her service, the challenges she had faced, and her commitment to the community. Her honesty and courage touched many hearts. One by one, neighbors stood to show their support. Sharing stories of their own struggles and triumphs, Mrs. Caldwell, who rarely spoke, approached Alina after the meeting. "I'm sorry for doubting you," she said quietly. "It takes strength to stand as you have." Alina smiled warmly. "Thank you. It means more than you know." The fundraiser that followed was a success beyond expectations. Neighbors worked together to make it memorable, setting up decorations, preparing food, and sharing stories. The event raised significant funds for veterans programs, strengthening the bonds within the neighborhood as the sun set on the day's efforts. Alina and James stood together, feeling the weight of the storm begin to lift. They had faced doubt and division, but had emerged stronger and more united with their neighbors. Alina looked at James, her eyes shining with gratitude. "This place is becoming more than just a neighborhood. It's a home." James smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "And we're helping to build it one moment at a time." The challenges were not over, but the couple knew they had the strength and support to face whatever came next, united by courage, truth, and a shared hope for the future. The months that followed the fundraiser brought a new sense of harmony to the neighborhood. Alina and James found themselves not just accepted, but genuinely welcomed. Where once there had been whispers and wary glances, now there were greetings, invitations, and shared laughter. The transformation was not just about them, it was about the entire neighborhood growing stronger, more compassionate, and more connected. The walls that suspicion had built had crumbled, replaced by bridges of understanding and respect. Mrs. Caldwell, once the most skeptical voice, had become an unexpected ally. She invited Alina over for tea one afternoon, her weathered hands carefully arranging a bouquet of wildflowers on the kitchen table. "I've watched many people come and go," she said softly, "but few have the courage and kindness you've shown. You've reminded me what it means to be part of a community." Alina smiled, touched by the gesture. "Thank you. Means a lot to hear that from you." It's the neighborhood's annual summer barbecue was a celebration not only of the season, but of the journey they had all shared. Alina and James were at the heart of it, surrounded by neighbors who had become friends. Children played together, stories were exchanged, and the sense of belonging was palpable. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Alina stood quietly on the edge of the gathering, watching the scene unfold. She thought of the rocky start, the calls to the police, the doubts, the whispered questions, and marveled at how far they had come. James joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "We did it," he said softly. Alina nodded. Together. In that moment, the neighborhood was no longer just a place where they lived. It was home, a place of acceptance, friendship, and shared hope. And as the stars began to twinkle overhead, Alina knew that the scars she carried, the challenges she had faced, and the courage she had shown had not only transformed her life, but had helped to change an entire community. She was no longer just the new resident with a military ID. She was a neighbor, friend, and a valued part of something greater. The journey had been long, but the destination was worth every step. And at last, Alina and James were truly home.